Okay, so welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
This one's pretty cool. You guys sent us down quite a rabbit hole with this one. The 1999 thriller The Ninth Gate, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of people might have this one like filed away in their brain as, oh yeah, that kind of like supernatural mystery, Johnny Depp kind of looking,
Right.
haunted and cool, but like our deep dive here, we're going way beyond that, right? We're going to be pulling apart its production, how it was received, and then like all those really interesting ideas that are just kind of simmering under the surface.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I think that's so interesting right off the bat is that this film is actually taken from, like, it's from a book, right?
It is.
Arturo Pérez Reverte's 1993 novel, The Club Dumas. So we're going to be tracing that journey from book to screen, which I'm really excited about.
Me too.
So, okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, let's do it. So the Ninth Gate introduces us to Dean Corso, who is a rare book dealer whose primary motivation, let's be frank, is money. He's hired by this very eccentric, very wealthy collector, Boris Balkan. Now, Balkan possesses this mysterious 17th century book titled The Nine Gates of the Kingdom of Shadows.
Wow.
And legend has it that only 3 copies of this book exist. And it's rumored to have been adapted from a text written by the devil himself containing the secrets to not only summoning the devil, but also the secrets to invincibility and immortality. Balkan believes that 2 of the 3 copies are forgeries, and he tasks Corso with authenticating all 3 copies and acquiring the genuine one no matter the cost. And I think what's really fascinating here is this this immediate sense of unease, of incredibly high stakes that we're presented with from the outset.
Yeah, totally. It's like, he's got this initial assignment. It sounds like it's going to be like kind of a dusty day in the archives, right? Just like looking through old books,
Right.
But it gets murky fast.
It does.
So we've got the previous owner of Balkan's copy, this guy, Andrew Telfer, another like book lover, ends up committing suicide shortly after selling the book to Balkan.
Yeah.
Then Telfer's widow, Liana, suddenly is like very interested in getting this book back. There's this like, it's almost like noirish kind of a scene where she tries to seduce Corso to get the book, which doesn't work out for her, by the way.
No.
And then Corso's business partner, Bernie, who's like been looking after Balkan's copy, turns up dead.
Yeah.
And the really like unsettling detail is that like his body's like staged in a way that like mirrors one of the engravings from the Nine Gates. It's almost like a message that it's like way more than just like a squabble over rare books,
Exactly. It's definitely not a simple case of greed or possession. This ritualistic element, it introduces really disturbing ritualistic element, and this it forges this direct connection between the book and these violent acts.
Yeah.
And following Bernie's death, Corso travels to Toledo, Spain, where he meets the Ceniza brothers, who are meticulous book restorers. And the Ceniza brothers, they uncover a crucial clue.
Okay.
They discover that 3 of the engravings within Balkan's copy bear a very distinctive signature, LCF. Corso interprets this LCF as Lucifer's signature. Now, LCF in the film, it becomes more than just a clue. It's almost like an author, like an authorial stamp. And it starts to raise these questions about the very act of creation, both within the film and in the film's reality,
Right.
Like, who is the author here?
Yeah.
Is it a malevolent force, or is it a human, manipulating these symbols for their own benefit?
So that LCF kind of becomes like a breadcrumb trail.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It kind of sends him across Europe to compare these other copies.
Exactly.
So first up, he goes to Sintra, Portugal, to examine Victor Fargas's copy of the book. And what do you know?
Surprise, surprise.
The signature, the LCF signature is there too.
It is.
But it's on 3 different engravings
Yes.
than the ones in Balkan's copy.
Right.
And not only that, these engravings, even the ones with the signature, they're like subtly but distinctly different
Yes.
compared to the ones in Balkan's copy.
Well.
So right away there are inconsistencies.
Yes.
And then he goes to Paris and he examines the Baroness Kessler's copy. Same pattern.
Yes.
3 engravings with LCF. Again, different from the ones in the other 2 books.
Right.
So it kind of begs the question, are these just like random errors from like the 17th century printing process,
Right.
Or is there something more deliberate happening?
Yeah, and the escalating violence surrounding these books really does reinforce this notion of intentionality. Following Corso's examination of their copies, both Fargas and Kessler meet rather violent ends.
Yeah.
And pages with engravings are ripped from their books. And this suggests that someone is actively trying to control or perhaps reconstruct the information contained within these volumes. And it's not just about owning a copy.
Hmm.
You know, it seems that it's about possessing specific pages,
Yeah.
specific components from each copy. You know, think of it like a puzzle
Oh, yeah.
with 3 different sets of pieces.
Yeah.
No single set is complete on its own, you know.
Right.
And Corso begins to realize that perhaps, just perhaps, the devil's secrets are not held within one perfect, pristine copy,
Yeah.
but they're scattered, they're dispersed across these 3 imperfect versions.
So right around now, this really interesting character comes into the story, the girl.
Yes.
I mean, she's often referred to as, you know, just the girl.
Also, yeah.
But she's this really enigmatic, almost spectral presence. She's just kind of shadowing Corso from basically the moment that Balkan sets him on this quest. And as Corso starts to, like, put together these anomalies, you know, like the different LCF engravings, these subtle changes in the illustrations, he starts to, like, formulate this theory, right?
Yes, he does.
And it's a pretty unsettling theory, the idea that all 3 copies might actually be genuine but intentionally flawed in different ways. Meaning, to actually, like, complete the ritual, to actually summon the devil, you would need all 3 with their, like, unique variations.
Yes.
And then this theory is put to the test big time because Liana Telfer, I mean, talk about, like, a character with some, like, serious motivation, you know?
Oh, yeah.
She ends up stealing Balkan's copy from Corso's hotel room.
She does.
And he tracks her down to this mansion, or this very, like, kind of ominous-looking place. And he actually witnesses her in the middle of, like, a full-on satanic ceremony using the book.
Yeah.
But then in a really brutal twist, Balkan just, like, suddenly appears.
He does.
Interrupts the ritual, murders Liana in cold blood, and then just, like, takes back his book and, of course, the pages with the engravings. I mean, talk about a plot twist, right?
What a twist, yeah. And what do you think that sudden intervention reveals about Balkan's understanding of the ritual or his own sense of control?
It's almost like he's like playing a different game entirely.
Yeah, he's a few steps ahead.
So Balkan now thinks he has all the pieces.
Right.
He's got everything he needs.
Yeah.
Corso, not a guy to be easily deterred. He goes after him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And he ends up pursuing him to this, like, very remote, imposing castle. And it's not just any castle. It's the one depicted in one of the engravings. And it was also, like, featured on this postcard that Corso found in Baroness Kessler's belongings.
Oh, wow.
So Balkan plans to actually do the summoning ritual in this specific location. It seems like it's the place, like, designated by the book.
By the book itself, yeah.
And Balkan, I mean, he even, like, traps Corso, you know, immobilizes him so he can't mess up his plans. Balkan then lays out all the engravings on, like, this makeshift altar, and he starts reciting these phrases that are linked to each of these 9 images. They're almost like poetic verses. They kind of mirror all these violent events that we've seen throughout the film. And then he douses himself and the entire area with gasoline, and he lights it all on fire.
Whoa.
Clearly convinced he's going to be, like, you know, invincible to the flames.
Right. Yeah.
But it doesn't go quite as planned.
It doesn't, does it?
No.
So the invocation, it doesn't unfold as Balkan expects. He's not immune to the flames. He's engulfed, and he's in agonizing pain. Corso manages to free himself, and in a pretty grim act of mercy, he actually shoots Balkan, putting him out of his misery.
Right.
And then he escapes the inferno. So it seems pretty definitive, right?
Yeah.
This horrifying but definitive conclusion. But the mystery of this book, you know, it runs deeper than we think.
Absolutely. And just when you think, okay, it's wrapped up, the girl reappears.
She does.
She's back. And she reveals something huge. That 9th engraving that Balkan used, even though it had the LCF signature, it was a fake.
Forgery.
Yeah, forgery. And following her lead, Corso goes back to the Sinisa brothers' shop only to find it completely empty. It's like they're clearing out, they're gone. And in this, like, almost darkly comical moment, the actual 9th engraving just, like, slides off a piece of furniture that they're, like, carrying out of the shop.
Oh, my goodness.
And this image is totally different.
Yeah.
It's a likeness of the girl.
Of the girl herself.
So, I mean, this suggests like a really deep connection between her and the book.
Right.
Maybe even that she was involved in like its creation.
It's true. It's almost like we're seeing, the author, the true author of the book revealed.
Totally. So, with this genuine ninth engraving now, finally in his possession, Corso, he goes back to that castle,
Yeah.
the one from the engravings.
Yeah, right.
And the film ends with him seemingly fulfilling all the requirements of the ritual, putting the ninth engraving with the others, and then he just crosses the threshold, walks through the ninth gate.
He does.
And the implication being he succeeded where Balkan so violently failed.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the people who made this crazy, unsettling story, come to life on screen.
Yeah.
This film was directed by the legendary, just the iconic Roman Polanski,
Mm-hmm.
who also co-wrote and produced it.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that while the film takes inspiration from the Club Dumas, Polanski, and his co-writer, John Brownjohn, they really focused on the Nine Gates storyline.
Yes.
They actually left out this whole other parallel plot from the book that involves a manuscript of the Three Musketeers, which is really interesting.
That is interesting.
And it actually digs into the whole idea of literary forgery, which, kind of connects to the themes, but they just, cut it out entirely.
Yeah, they streamlined this story.
Yeah.
Really allowed for a very tight focus on the occult themes.
Yeah, and what's, I think, really interesting is that Polanski himself has said he doesn't even believe in the occult.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
So he's a skeptic.
Yeah.
At heart, but he was really drawn to the genre. Like, he saw an opportunity to play with all those established cliches and create this mystery where the object itself, like the book, becomes this driving force.
It does.
Of the story.
Right.
And the casting's pretty noteworthy too. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Johnny Depp, right?
Iconic.
It's Johnny Depp, and he was apparently Polanski's first and only choice for the role of Dean Corso.
Wow.
Yeah, and this was as early as 1997.
Wow.
And Depp himself was very excited to work with Polanski, but there were rumblings of creative differences on set,
Yeah.
particularly about how Depp was interpreting Corso. Depp actually felt it was the director's job to push him more. While Polanski, he said that Depp played the character in a rather understated manner, which wasn't really what he initially envisioned.
Interesting.
And another interesting little tidbit is that Corso's kind of disheveled look in the film is actually based on Philip Marlowe, Raymond Chandler's iconic private investigator from those classic film noirs.
Oh, wow. That's a nice little detail.
Yeah, so there's some cool connections there. So Frank Langella,
Yeah. Another icon.
the intense Boris Balkan, that was also a really deliberate choice.
He was.
Apparently influenced by Langella's performance in Adrian Lyne's adaptation of Lolita.
Oh, wow.
And there's actually a little bit of behind-the-scenes drama with the casting of Baroness Kessler.
Really?
The original actress, she got sick, and then the replacement they found, she had trouble with the dialogue, and then they ended up bringing in Barbara Jeffert at the last minute. And she actually managed to learn all her lines, do this convincing German accent with almost no preparation.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Another, just a fun fact, is that during the filming, Johnny Depp met Vanessa Paradis.
Oh, wow.
And they ended up being together for a really long time.
Yeah, they did.
So yeah, a little bit of trivia there. The film used some amazing locations.
It did.
They filmed in France, Portugal, and Spain during the summer of '98. So we get to see some really striking architecture. The Chalet Biester in Portugal, that was Victor Fargas's mansion. And then there's all these gorgeous chateaux in France, like the Chateau de Ferrières and the Chateau de Puivert.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, and the historical city of Toledo in Spain also features prominently in the film.
It does. And the soundtrack is really, really good.
Oh, yeah.
Really effective.
Yeah.
The main theme, it's actually loosely based on Camille Saint-Saëns' Havanese.
Oh, cool.
And there's this beautiful vocalized performed by Simi Jo, who's a Korean soprano. And it's kind of woven throughout the score. And some of the track titles, they really kind of emphasize, I think, this dark and perilous journey that Corso undertakes.
Totally.
You have tracks like Bernie is Dead, Liana's Death, and Balkan's Death.
Yeah, totally. So let's talk about how this film was actually received when it came out. So it premiered in Spain in August of '99, and then it came out in North America in March of 2000. And while it did pretty well at the
Yeah.
box office worldwide.
Yeah.
It actually made more than it cost to make.
Yeah.
But it actually got a pretty cold reception from critics, at least in North America.
Really?
Yeah, and people were comparing it to Polanski's, Rosemary's Baby, his supernatural masterpiece, and they found The Ninth Gate to be kind of lacking in the same level of suspense.
Interesting.
And a lot of people thought it was just too slow.
Huh. Well, I mean, considering the subject matter, I mean, maybe it was a little too cerebral for some,
Yeah.
maybe expecting something more, kind of in your face.
Yeah, and some of the critical reactions from North America were brutal.
Right.
Roger Ebert said that the ending was just unsatisfying. He kind of wanted more concrete answers.
Right, right.
And Elvis Mitchell from the New York Times had this really cutting remark. He said that the film was about as scary as a sock puppet reenactment of the Blair Witch Project.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Lisa Schwartzbaum, Entertainment Weekly, she gave it a really low rating, described it as middlebrow art house Euro rot.
Ouch.
Kenneth Turan, the Los Angeles Times, he found it to be too laid back. He thought it wasn't concerned enough with keeping a good pace going. And then Jay Hoberman from the Village Voice basically called it barely releasable hokum.
Wow.
So yeah, I got slammed.
Yeah. Some pretty harsh criticisms there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, how polarized the reception was.
Totally.
I mean, do you think those critics, maybe they just, they missed the mark a little bit?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they were expecting something, more akin to Rosemary's Baby.
Totally. And I think, the funny thing is the response in Europe was actually way more positive.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
A lot of reviewers actually praised the film's slow pace and its sense of irony. And I think that's kind of it's an interesting thing to note, right?
Absolutely.
How different cultures can really view the same piece of art in such different ways.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
really highlights those cultural differences and expectations.
Totally. And the thing is, some critics, in the years since, they've actually revisited the film and they've reappraised it.
Oh, wow.
Philip Strick, who writes for Sight and Sound, he thinks it deserves a second viewing. He thinks people might actually come to appreciate it more over time.
Yeah.
Richard Corliss from Time said that it's actually Polanski's most accessible film in a long time. Bob Graham in the San Francisco Chronicle specifically liked Johnny Depp's performance, and he thought Polanski did a really good job of handling those film noir conventions. And then there's this online critic, Peter Canabees. He went so far as to call it a sorely underrated occult mystery.
Wow. So opinions, they're very diverse.
Yeah.
And they've certainly evolved since the film's release.
Totally. And there was even this legal issue after the film was released.
Oh, really?
Artisan Entertainment, the company that distributed the film, they sued Polanski.
They did.
They claimed that he had kept over $1 million in VAT refunds
Wow.
from France,
Okay.
which he was apparently supposed to give to the completion bond company.
So even after the film wrapped, there was still, still a lot of complexities.
Totally.
So as we kind of bring this deep dive to a close, it's pretty clear that The Ninth Gate, it's so much more than just your average supernatural thriller, right? It delves into these really compelling themes of obsession, the allure of forbidden knowledge, and the nature of belief itself. Those different critical reactions in the films, that kind of mystery, that kind of lingers. It really makes a lasting impression.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder if those people who maybe initially hated it, if they went back and watched it again, they'd find something new there. So here's a final thought for everyone out there listening. Given the film's super ambiguous ending, and Corso's final act of walking through that ninth gate,
right?
What do you think he found on the other side?
Yeah.
And what does this film, with all its twists and turns, what does it really tell us about the pursuit of power, the pursuit of ultimate knowledge?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it's something to really sit with.